Hello and welcome to my inaugural video on modeling. And what I'm hoping to do in this series is just every day or so, at least a few times a week, upload a video roughly an hour or so long, just to give you an update on the progress of some of my modeling projects, share with you some of my future ideas, as well as share with you some of my past experiences that we can learn from, and I'll share my ideas with you guys. And utilizing the comment section in this video, please feel free to give me feedback. Let me know what you think of the series. Give me some ideas on some of the projects I'm working on. I'm not too proud to turn down good ideas, so please bring them in. That's how we grow this hobby, is by sharing experiences with tips and tricks that we've learned from. Some work great, some don't work so good. And I'd rather learn from hearing about you doing it than me trying it and failing and maybe breaking up a good model. So this inaugural video is primarily going to be about rocketry, because that's what all my projects are currently. I do have some RC airplane projects going on in the background as well. So in the future, I'll give you an update on those things also. But for now, let's just stick with what I've got going here on the table. The first thing I want to discuss is my Citation Patriot. Now, you all saw the video of this first flight when it did not do very good on a B motor, and it nosedived in and hit the ground before it even ejected the chute. So I decided, well, I'm going to skip the B motors and jump straight into a C motor, which is twice the power of a B. And all that did was it got it up a lot higher before it decided to nosedive into the ground, because I was running a C65, which it calls for. But that number 5 in the name, C65, indicates the number of seconds of delay from the time the motor quits burning until it ejects the parachute. And 5 seconds was just way too long. It arced over and it hit the ground, and that's all she wrote. Busted the body tube and destroyed the nose cone. And you probably saw the repair video I did when I replaced the upper body tube with the new section, and I got a new nose cone from a good friend of mine, Dave. And I built it. It came out flawlessly in the building, but then when it came to the painting, it's when things got really bad. I'll use the overhead camera for this, but you can see here the crackling. I put the white on it, and then once I hit it with the clear coat, it crinkled really bad. And I have struggled with this. This is Rust-Oleum 2X paint from Walmart. It's like $4 a can. It's cheap, and that's why a lot of us use it, because of the price point. But I've struggled on so many projects using clear. So if any of you guys out there know what's causing it, it was like 65 degrees in the garage the day I sprayed it. I let it sit a few days after the base till the clear. I mean, I did everything, as far as I know, correct, and it wasn't like crinkled all over. There's some shiny parts and then crinkle, shiny, crinkle, and a little bit on the nose cone as well. So I'm going to have to wet sand these down. So I'm not going to do that on camera because it's going to make a mess, but I'm going to take these out. I'm going to wet sand it down with maybe 300, 400 grit sandpaper, just to get the ridges down from the crinkling. And I may take it down all the way down to the primer again. And then I'm just going to let it dry for several days, hit it with more white, and I may not clear it. And of course black on the nose cone, because I'm not having luck with Rust-Oleum clear. So we'll see what I decide to do when it comes to that. But yeah, if you guys have had any experience with Rust-Oleum, please let me know. I've looked in the forums, and a lot of people struggle, and really, I do see, unfortunately, a lot of derogatory comments saying, you got to read the instructions. Well, I've read the instructions, and as far as I know, I'm following them. Painting has never been my forte, and this is evidence of that, but hopefully we'll get it solved, and we'll go from there. So again, I'm going to do this off camera, so by the next episode, I'll have these crinkles pretty much gone, and maybe even a repaint by then. So that's the update on the Patriot. The other little project I'm working on is, as you guys know, I love running altimeters in not just some of my rockets, but all of my rockets. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing in that I'm able to download data and really understand what the rocket's doing with different size motors and different weather conditions. And for the bigger rockets, it's not an issue, but for the smaller rockets, it is a struggle. And I know I showed on a previous video how I'm inserting the Flight Sketch Minis into the nose cone of the 18mm rockets, like my Wizard, my Viking, even the Indicator. As big a rocket as that is, the upper tube is only an 18mm tube. So they will fit, but they'll jam up really easy. So I'm inserting the altimeter up into the nose cone itself, which should prevent any backing up of the parachute and the wadding and anything else that may be in the tube. So that's something I want to show you. So here's what I've got. I've got 3 different altimeters for 3 different purposes. Well, I should say 4 altimeters, but 3 are of the same kind. I've got 3 Flight Sketch Minis, and I've got 1 Jolly Logic Altimeter 2. Now, Dynashoot is a company that makes little protective covers. This may be better on the overhead, but they're little flame-resistant. I'm not quite sure. It's not a rubber, but kind of like a foam rubber type material to protect it and pad it from impact on landings and whatnot. But it's also fireproof, so it prevents the fire from the ejection charge from damaging the altimeters. Now, if you think running, let me pull one out here. If you think running an altimeter this size into an 18mm tube is a tight fit, imagine doing it with this on it. There's no way. So that's why I designed a nose cone system, and if I don't get to it today, maybe I'll show you in another video. I think I've shown it previously, but I'll show it again anyways, how I insert these up into the nose cone so they're not part of inside the tube. So when the nose cone ejects, it takes this with it, gets it out of the way. So here's what I've got. I've got this Flight Sketch Mini that I've designated solely as my 18mm altimeter. I've got a loop of Kevlar cord tied to a fish clip, which is actually, it's called a barrel swivel. You can get these at Walmart. In fact, here's a bag of them right here. Like $1.40 or $1.50 for a bag of 10 or 12 actually. So great deal there. And then I tie this on, and then I clip this to the nose cone itself. So this will prevent it from flying off on its own. This one is not covered in any way. It's not protected. And so this one will insert directly into the nose cone. So that's what this one is for. Now, to make it fit better, I had to remove, let me show you how. The altimeters come with a battery holder or carrier made of plastic. And the battery pops into the little carrier and then slides into the altimeter. Well, part of the white plastic sticking out is kind of bulky, and it makes it a little bit harder to fit it into the nose cone. So for running the altimeter in the nose cone, I just pulled that plastic piece out and I just slide the battery directly into that slot, and it seems to hold up just fine. So that's what this altimeter is for. So this one is, again, only for my 18mm tubes that the altimeter goes in the nose cone. The next step up, let's say I've got a BT, I'm thinking here, 50 maybe, like my Spirit and my Solaris. They're a little bit thicker body tubes. They'll take the same altimeter, but again, with the protective pouch, it's a little tight, and I really don't want to risk it. So what I'm going to show you actually right now is how I make my own little protective pouch. And I'll use the overhead for this demonstration. But I just simply take a piece of wadding from Estes, just a one ply of paper, fold one section in half. Let's see, I've already got the battery in there, and I go ahead and leave the plastic carrier there, and just simply lay this down. Make sure the on and off switch is facing up so you can actually get to it. and just start wrapping. Now this does two things. One, it's not real thick, so you're not getting a lot of padding, but you do get some absorption padding in that. And let me slide it up just a bit so I can access the on and off switch a little easier. There. So the on and off switch is just barely sticking up out of the pouch there. And then simply wrap the remainder around, and then I take these little rubber bands. I'm not sure what the official title of these are, but they're used on, it's a hair product, and my wife has about a gazillion of these things. I think you buy them for $1 and you get a gazillion of them, and they're different colors, so don't make fun of my pink, but they're just the right size to wrap the wadding onto the altimeter. So I'll take 4 of these. I'll do 2 horizontally and then 2 vertically. And the 2 vertical ones I'm actually going to kind of crisscross. And just make sure they don't interfere with the on and off switch. Okay, so that's good. Now, this will just slide right down the tube along with the parachute and everything else, and it won't get bound up because the tube is much wider than the altimeter. But this pouch, again, it gives it some protective padding as well as prevents any fire and flame from the discharge to burn or hurt any of the components. Now, one other thing I need to do is, and I'll do this for you now, is to install a shock cord, a tether mount for that. So I've got a spool here of Kevlar cord, and let me find a used piece that I can work with. I'll use this one here. And there's a little hole in the upper corner of the altimeter. We'll run that through. And before I seal it, I want to install one of these little swivel hooks. This just happens to be a size 7, which is a pretty general size for this, the low power models. And then simply just run your Kevlar through this little ring, like so, and kind of get an idea of how long you want it to be. A couple inches is plenty. And then simply just run a knot. I'm not real good at tying knots. And it doesn't help that these are one of these legs on the knot is quite a bit longer. There we go. Okay, so there's our knot. We just simply pull it taut. Okay, and let's grab some scissors. There we go. This piece is too small to do anything with, so we'll toss it, but I'll save this for future projects. Okay, so there we go. Now this is ready to go in my mid-size low power rockets. Okay, the third altimeter that I want to share with you guys is the one that goes in the big rockets. Like for example, my Zephyr, my high power rocket. I'm going to run this altimeter in that one, and this one is it's a regular model Flight Sketch Mini in the pouch, because a 4-inch tube has plenty of room to carry the full pouch. And the way the pouch actually works is there's a hole in the pouch that the Kevlar runs through the hole, through the altimeter, then out another hole, and back to the knot. So there's no way the altimeter can come out of the pouch because it's anchored and tied through the pouch itself. So those are my 3 Flight Sketch Minis. Depending on which model I'm flying will determine which of the 3 that I go with. Now the 4th altimeter that I have that I want to show you, it's totally different technology. This is a Jolly Logic Altimeter 2, and it will not fit in the smaller rockets. There's no way this would fit in a Wizard or Indicator. So I will run this in my Saturn V, my NASA SLS, the Solaris maybe. A lot also determines whether or not I can actually use the pouch. In recent flights on my Saturn and the SLS, I use this just bare, without the pouch. Obviously with the Zephyr, I'll be able to use the pouch. So when it's available, I would like to run both altimeters. In case one fails, I'll pull data off of the other one. Now, the data pulled from these is slightly different. The cool thing about the Flight Sketch Mini is the fact that it's operated via Wi-Fi directly to your cell phone. So you have to download the app, and unfortunately I can't show you because I'm using my phone to record this, but I'll figure out a way in the future to maybe show you how the app works. But once this is installed and turned on, you arm it through your phone. When you arm it, it clears the data from the previous flight, wipes the slate clean, and then it tells you ready for launch. So at that point, once it recognizes that initial acceleration, the G-force of liftoff, it's recording, and it records the acceleration, the G-force, the peak G-force. It also gives you an average G-force. It gives you an ascent time. It gives you an apogee altitude. It gives you an apogee of when the chute deploys. And then it also gives you a descent rate. Under canopy, it should be, much slower than if it were just nosediving in. And then, of course, at the end of the flight, it'll give you a flight duration, total time in seconds. But the really cool thing about all that data is it downloads to your phone. Then you can upload it to the Flight Sketch website. And if you're not familiar with that, go to Flight Sketch. I believe it's flightsketch.com. Let me verify that real quick. Because at least all of my flights, I upload to them. I actually attach photographs. Yes, it's flightsketch.com. And then go to Logbook, or I think Flight Log is where you'll find it. And you can view anyone and everyone's flights that they record. And it shows a graph, a bar chart of how high it went, what its velocity was. A lot of cool things you can do with the Flight Sketch Minis. The Altimeter 2, not quite as cool, but it pulls a lot of good data out. A lot of it's the same data. Off the top of my head, I can't even think of any major differences in the data, but this is just more rugged, I guess you could say. It's beefier, it has a casing around it, whereas the Flight Sketch, it's just open circuitry. It's not protected. So this will take a more abuse than the little guys do. But the nice thing about it is you turn it on and off, and it gives you all your data right there on the screen. So it's user-friendly in that you don't need a cell phone. You just have to have the unit itself. Now, one thing that's really impressed me about both altimeters is when I've flown rockets with both, I've gotten no more than 1 foot difference. If I fly 186 on this altimeter, this one might say 187. I've never been more than 1 foot off, which in the grand scheme of things, that's phenomenal consistency. That shows that they both read equally well. So kudos to both companies that put these out. Very, very good quality when they work. I've had issues with the Flight Sketch Minis breaking because, again, they're open circuitry, and I've had a lot of bad landings. If you guys have seen my earlier launch day videos, a lot of rough landings, and I'm surprised that when they did work again, I was surprised that they did, because that's a lot of impact on the hard surface that I fly off of, which is primarily hard packed dirt and rock. So those are pretty grueling conditions. The other thing I want to talk about is, you may have noticed I had no parachute issues in my last video, and there's a few reasons for that. One is I've learned how to pack the wadding in better. I guess I've seen too many old Civil War movies when they're loading their muskets with the ramrod and they're ramming the powder and the ball and as tight as they could. And I think I was doing that. I was ramming too much down the tube to the back end. So then when the deployment charge would fire, everything would just it would just cram up and not deploy the chute. I've learned just pack things in loosely. What I'm doing now is I'm running one sheet of Estes wadding paper down there, real loose, about halfway down the tube. Then I take foam, not foam, it's insulation. Well, it's like a foam insulation that I get at the hardware store. It's like for your attics, that loose foam that you can spread along your attic to act as an insulation. And that's what I use. And I put it in the tube, but I don't jam it tight anymore. I just let it loosely fill the voids. And then I take what's called a parachute protector. Now let me show you the one that I've got one so far. I just received some more in the mail today, actually. So I'm going to install those in my other rockets. But until I got more, for example, my last launch day video, the 3 flights I had to untie the parachute protector out of this one, put it in the next one, take it out, put it in the next one. So, and you know what? It's not in this Patriot. I must be in my, what was the last rocket I flew in that video? I think it was the Saturn V, so that must be where it's hiding. So let me set the Patriot aside for a second. Let me pull the Saturn out. Well, let me see. I'm just going to have to pull it out and see. Yep, there it is. So you see this little black piece of fabric? I don't know if it's neoprene. I don't know what the fabric is called. I could probably look it up. Does it say? It's called flame resistant fabric. So, and I get these from Dynashoot as well. And I'll show you. Well, actually, here's the new package. Unopened. And again, it says Nomex. That's what it is. 100% Nomex fabric protector. So after I've run the wadding in, then the foam insulation material, then I take this, and it's tied to the shock cord. Then I get my parachute, which is folded up properly, and I kind of insert it into this like that. I funnel it in, and then I put the whole thing down the tube with the parachute. And I use a little ramrod. I usually just take a wooden dowel with me to the field. And I use that to gently press it in. If I feel any resistance going in, you know it's going to have that same resistance coming out. And that's not good, because then you know it's not going to deploy. So it should go down nice and smooth. Then once I get the parachute in, then I'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the parachute cord, the shroud lines, and the rest of the shock cord. Now the shock cord is also something I've changed. I was using the stock rubber elastic that came in the Estes kits, but I've since changed to this braided elastic, which I get at Walmart for $1 or $2 for several feet. And this is, I want to say 5/8. No, not 5/8. 3/8. I've also got some 1/4 inch for some of the smaller stuff. But what it does is the braiding material actually helps protect the rubber from that scorching heat of the deployment charge. Because after so many flights, your standard Estes cord is going to break. It's just going to finally get burned through and be done. So I'm really pleased with this. So yeah, this is the one that's already got. So now I need to run this new one here in the Citation, as well as I've got another one for my NASA SLS. So let me set this aside. Tell you what I'm going to do though. I'm not going to put the one in the Patriot just yet, because I still need to sand and paint the tube, and that's just one thing I don't want to have to hassle with, is that shoe protector. So I'm going to forego putting it in the Patriot, but I will show you how I put it in the SLS. So here's the SLS. And again, I'm running the same. This is the 1/4 inch braided elastic. Okay. Now, one thing I've learned to do is I don't permanently attach anything to my nose cone. I use those little fish hook swivels on just about everything now, because I'm going to have to detach it from the nose cone to run it through the parachute protector. So there, I've disconnected from the nose cone. We'll set that aside. Let me get my new chute protector out. And the nice thing about these is they're washable. So after a dozen flights, or whenever you feel the need to, you can simply toss these in your washing machine and you're good to go. Now they come pre-slotted. I'm sorry, stitched for a slot, but you need to cut the slot yourself. So let me take my X-Acto. Thought I had my cutting board. That's okay. This is a nice mat and I don't want to ruin it too soon. But you just simply slit the fabric with your X-Acto. There, now it's open. And then you take your shock cord, you run it through one side. Now what they recommend, and what I did the last time I flew and it worked flawlessly, is to run it through the rocket, or the shock cord, just to the point where it exits the body tube. Now, I don't want it to be too close in. I want it to be maybe an inch or so out. That's where I did it the other day, and that worked perfectly. So at that point there, I'm simply going to run, and they say to run it through twice. So I'm going to run it over, back in from the bottom side. And actually, this is a good opportunity to tie you a knot. Again, I'm not an expert on knot tying, so if you see me tying incorrectly, let me know. And I'm going to have to... That probably didn't do anything, but I'm going to tie it to the back side here. And I can make it a little bit more permanent. When I flew the other day, I didn't tighten them down as tight as I probably would have liked to, because I knew I was going to have to remove it after that flight to install it in the next rocket. So, but now I can make it a little bit more tight. And I'm going to put a double knot on it, so I'm going to tighten the knot the other direction. There, and I'll give it a good cinch there. There we go. So now it's all set to protect a parachute. So I'm going to run that in and take my ramrod just to... I don't want to forget to... Oh, and one other thing too. Inside the tube is actually anchored to the bottom of the rocket is Kevlar. The Kevlar runs up just maybe an inch or so shy of the top, because if it came out too far you could get a zipper effect and it would tear the side of the cardboard up. So I've got a loop in the Kevlar about an inch from the top, and that's where I tie down my elastic. Now if the elastic ever does break or it needs replacing, you probably wonder, how do you get in to retie a knot on that loop? Well, you don't do it on here. What you do is you route it out the bottom, out the motor tube, and there's where you can access the loop on the Kevlar, tie up a new elastic cord, and then run it back up as you see out the top. So that's the little trick to that. But let me hook this back onto the nose cone so I don't lose it. And when possible, I'm going to start always running my equipment in the nose cone. I bored out a hole here to run my altimeters into the nose cone. Again, freeing up any possible interference in the body tube, because there's nothing worse than watching your rocket come down with no parachute. All right, and I do have some future rockets that I'll show you at the end of this video that are going to take this size parachute. These are 3x3s, by the way, 3 inch by 3 inch. So speaking of future projects, let me go ahead and show you what I've got for a future project. My next build, excuse me while I step away here for a second, because I'm jumping straight from low power to high power in the Zephyr, I felt guilty about skipping the mid power stuff. So I picked up a Hi-Flier XL. Now this runs C's, the C11s, which is a bigger motor, as well as D's and E's. Those are 24 millimeter motors as opposed to the smaller 18 millimeter A, B's, and C's that I've been running. Whether or not I'll be able to get this built and flown before I fly the Zephyr, that's going to be tight because I'm down to 2 weeks to go. So if I can get this built and flown in 2 weeks, then I'll have succeeded at my goal. But I don't want to rush it just for that sake. So that's what it's going to look like. It's a simple design. It's actually the same body tube as the Patriot. It's a BT50 size tube with the coupler. Very similar to the Citation. But the difference is it's made for bigger motors. And without giving it away, I have another Patriot in the queue to build. Same thing, Citation Patriot. And I may or may not have ordered a larger motor mount to take the 24 millimeter motors. But here's the kit itself. Again, just 2 tubes with the red coupler in the middle. It does have a pretty long, I'll show you the nose cone on it. Very similar to the Patriot. And I'll have to design a way to figure out, to open this up to fit my altimeters, but that's a project for not tonight. But what I do want to do tonight is start on the fins. Let me grab those. Now probably in the next video, you'll see me gluing these to the body tubes because there's some things I need to go out in the garage to do for some sanding. But to cut these out, before you cut them out, you want to sand them as best you can just because it's an opportunity to sand them while they're still in their flat plate. So I'm just going to take some 220 here, sand these down. But one thing I did on my Zephyr, which worked pretty well, was I primered the whole body. I glued the fins in, and then I messed with the primer and the filling. I'm afraid that if I try to do too much work to the wood, it'll get a warp to it. So I figured let me just get it onto the body tube first, primer it, which will seal it, and then I can start filling in the grain with filler. Because the primer's not going to fill in all this fine grain. Okay. See how quick and easy it is to sand these down when they're still in their frames. Now, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out to the garage and round the leading edges. I want to put a little contour on them. You can fly them with straight, flat edges that are blunt, but you're just not going to get the performance. And if you're not into breaking world records, then don't bother. But aesthetically, though, they're prettier when they're rounded as well. So there. Now these are good to go. In fact, I can go ahead and cut these out now. Let me do that. Just take your X-Acto knife and just run it down the seam. I really wish I knew where my little green pad was. And it's right here. I don't mind getting this cut up pretty good. So you can see those tabs are what's holding the fin in the frame. But they need to be cut to release the fin. And whenever you're cutting cross grain, it's a lot more difficult. So just make a bunch of, lightweight cuts. This is some hard balsa. Let me get back to that piece, that end. Again, cutting with the grain is so much easier. Okay, and you always want to preserve the extra wood that's left behind because you can use it as a template to build new fins if, heaven forbid, you crack it up or break or crash land your rocket and you need to build new fins. Just keep your template here and you can simply trace this out over a new sheet of balsa wood and cut it to the exact dimensions. So there we go. So I'm going to keep this frame for future use. So there's one fin, and it actually mounts this way. So this is the leading edge. So this is going to be the edge that gets rounded over. Now let's do the same to these other two. There's a bit of a warp in this wood already. It's teetering on the bench here. But hoping once I get it glued up, and there's other techniques too, and I may elect to put some sort of sealer on here before I glue it on. I'll have to just kind of what mood I'm in, and if I do that, what that'll give me the opportunity to do is, while the sealer is drying, I can clamp this in between some weights on a workbench, basically sandwiching them flat, and that would really help in getting rid of any warps. Boy, this cross grain is really, really tight on these sheets. That's why I was hoping to just kind of flex them to the point where they pop out. There it goes. Okay. One more piece. And there's going to be one other modification that I'm going to do, not only to this rocket, but to all of my larger fleet of rockets, like the Citation Patriot and the Saturn V and the SLS, and that's on the parachute system. Estes gives you a decent sized parachute with the kit. I believe they give you a 15-inch, and in my last flight video you may have noticed that that was an Apogee parachute on all 3 flights, and it was an Apogee 18-inch, and it worked great. The rockets came down nice and slow, but because of where I fly on the rocky terrain, slower the better. So I actually picked up, and I'll show you, a 24-inch parachute that I'm going to put in my larger rockets. So I'm going from what Estes gives you, a 15-inch parachute, all the way up to a 25-inch or 24-inch. There we go. And one other thing I'll do off camera is, it's always good to sand these little tabs off the edges, and you do that by just getting all 3 fins in perfect sync with each other, and then just run these on a sanding block, all 4 corners, or 4 edges in this case, 4, and get them identical to one another, and then I'll round the leading edges. So those are ready to go. Okay, and the last thing is what I mentioned earlier, is the parachutes. This is the parachute that you saw fly on all 3 of my flights in my last launch day video. Now, what you're going to see is burn holes and some damage to the chute, but that was done from previous flights on previous days when the chute was not ejecting and was actually burning up inside the tube because it never actually left the tube. But so this is the 18-inch, and you can see it's been through war. But it's still intact, and it still works. So I'm not going to dispose of it. You saw it work the other day on those 3 flights. They came down nice and stable. So what I'll probably do is just keep this as a backup in case something does happen to my larger one. But for now, it's going to go into storage. I take old paper towel tubes to protect my chutes. I've got a box, when I go out to the range, I've got a box full of paper towel tubes full of different size chutes, and then I just label them, 18-inch nylon, or whatever size it may be. And then I just run usually a rubber band to help keep the line intact, like so. So what am I replacing it with? A brand new, this is the first time I'm taking it out of its package, an Apogee 24-inch nylon. Now these parachutes that Apogee sells are just amazing. The feel of them, it's like a silky feel. They're lightweight. They fold up. They roll up really compact and tight. And they're not plastic, so they don't stay stuck to each other. They blossom open like nothing. So, but again, it's a nylon parachute. But look at that. It's dust here from that cutting. But look at this. It's beautiful. Same as the 18-inch. Just this is a larger version of it. So there you have it. And you may have noticed what I do is I take my fish hooks, and that's what I tie the parachutes to. And that way I can clip it on and off quick and easy. It's not permanently anchored to the actual rocket itself. So this will help. This will bring my smaller rockets down a lot slower and make landings a little bit easier, because I'm tired of gluing fins back on and making repairs to things that shouldn't have happened just because of the rocky terrain they did. So that'll be... To do this though, I need to lay this out on the floor, because it's really hard to do this on a small desk. So, well, that's about all I've got for this episode. By the next time you see me on a video though, I will be gluing the fins onto the body for the Hi-Flier. I want to get that started here real quick, because I got to get the paint done. See, once you get the paint on, you can't just paint it and then go out and do whatever. You've got to let it sit and dry and set and cure, and it takes days, not hours. So the sooner I can get it structurally built, the quicker I can get the paint on it, and then start to let it do its drying thing. So now you have a better idea of my altimeters and how I plan on using them in the different types of rockets that I'll be flying. And yeah, and again, the Patriot, next time you see it, should be fully coated with a fresh coat of white. And if the white gloss really pops, I may just forego the clear altogether. I'm not gonna mess with the clear again unless I really, really have to. I just don't want to risk damaging the good paint. If the base coat comes out good, I'm just gonna leave it alone. So with that, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next couple days on the next episode. And again, by the next episode, I should have a title for this. Kevin's modeling hour or modeling moment or something. Something clever will come to my mind and we'll do it. So again, thanks for watching and have a great and blessed day.